Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in yesterday, Monday, with Paula and her guest, Jeremy Rotten, or no, what's his name now? Johnny Rotten, who brought to us got Kayla's story, who's a young lady who had mental health issues, and unfortunately, the system just chewed her up and tossed her out, and she went home. That was that. And unfortunately, we're now trying to support her family and don't forget about her. So if you haven't watched that episode yet, please go check it out. Thank you very much to Paula for doing that. I really enjoy how she's really growing into podcasting and being able to do it. At first, she was timid and didn't want to come on, even in the backstage area. And now she's handling full shows by herself. Congratulations, Paula. It was a great episode. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and shared it. I really do appreciate it. Let's also remind you all, we're coming up to Christmas. Let's go ahead and take a look at becoming a member of the Levine Show. I put a post out there, and we're going to give away a free copy of a digital copy of the new book that I'm working on, Bearing Witness to the Coutts trial. So if you go ahead and become a member for a year, whether it's the reduced pricing or not, you'll get a free copy of that book, digital copy of that book. So go ahead and don't wait any longer. Go ahead and become a member. It's how we support the show. It's also how we make sure that we can go to places like Ottawa in January to go see Detective Helen Gruz, to go follow her hearing. It's members that help us make that happen. So go ahead and do that. I also have an announcement out of one of our good friends, Benita Peterson, who sent an email with some great news. So I'm going to share it with you, okay? Residents of the town of Barrhead have voted yes for a bylaw on neutrality. This is what you should be flying and stuff like that, whether or not the city or the town or the village should be neutral or not. Not being neutral means they'll fly flags for various groups, paint sidewalks in various ways, and that's taking a political stance. And this is what these are about. They're about staying neutral, because it's exactly what our government should be. So congratulations from this announcement out of Barrhead. Petitions can work, Benita reminds us, and we can cause policy change through petitions. And she's a very big proponent. Westlock had a very similar victory here in Alberta as well, with a petition, with Benita's efforts behind it. And this is a great step forward, because what we're doing, and she's doing a lot of, is bring it to the people, to have the people say when it comes to neutrality within your government. And the results were 653 votes, which was 57%, against the no's of 492, a total cast of 1145. So thank you very much to Benita for keeping us up to date on this. And yes, petitions can work. They can work. Okay. We're seeing towns around Alberta switching. Well, actually, I don't even want to say switching, because that's not fair. Just doing what they should be doing, not taking political stances, not flying certain flags, not painting certain crosswalks, because that's divisive, and that's also taking a political stance. So neutrality, I love it. Benita, thank you very much. All right, so we're waiting for our guest to connect. We have connected with her this morning. We're trying to get her into the studio. This is a former or retired federal prosecutor of Canada. I think it was 26 years or 23 years of experience in the role. And what she has been witnessing for months now, because she's a member. So if you become a member, you'll be able to talk to people like Diane back in the members area. But she's been a member for a while, and she's been watching the Coutts trial, the Ottawa trials, and everything else that's going on. And sure, it's federal prosecutor. Okay, so there's no federal prosecutor involved in these trials. At least there's not supposed to be. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit, because these are provincial prosecutors. But in either case, okay, great, she's on her way. But in either case, federal prosecution also is happening at the Mosley level and the appeals level. Those are in federal courts. We're getting a lot of things like that. The Cornell v. Trudeau is going to go through federal courts. That's not prosecution, but still federal courts. And she was going to highlight to us how she's seen things change, likely tremendously under Trudeau, where it's been weaponized. Okay, so the prosecution's office, federal, provincial, even municipal, appears to be weaponized against the citizens, especially if they're involved in dissent. And this is why she's raising her hand to come forward to us to talk about this, is because she's concerned. And this is not the office she left. It's not the office she was proud to work in. And she wants to make sure she can do her part to see us have a return to the rule of law. Ooh, I just saw someone pop up. and we'll see if we got some camera and some audio, and then we'll be able to get right into this. But what I'm also fighting for, if you've been watching the show for quite some time, is a return to the justice system. We don't seem to have a justice system. We have a legal system. Okay, we got a lot of laws on the books. They're changing all the time. They're hard to understand. Judges even make law and change law. So we do have a legal system, but we don't have a justice system. We haven't had one for quite some time. And the biggest difference in my mind between the two is when you're sitting down looking at the issues in a case-by-case basis, you take in more than just the legal facts. Yeah, Padge, if you can go ahead and give her a call, because I don't see her on here. Maybe audio only. But in either case, the difference between justice and legal is on a case-by-case basis, you review all the facts. For example, let me give you a good contrast. The Coutts trio, okay, they were convicted of mischief. They're looking at sentencing in January. And in that trial, they were not allowed to bring their motive forward. Why were they there? Why were they standing on that highway? Why were they trying to communicate with the government provincially and federally? Why were they there? That wasn't allowed in the trial. Motive for mischief isn't allowed. It's just simply part of the law, right? That's not justice. Justice would be, well, why are you there? Let's let the jury know what was your motive, and then let the jury decide whether or not that was color of right, like whether or not you had a right to do it. You had a belief it was the right thing to do. You can't really do color of right as a defense, which is a legal defense to mischief, if you can't bring in motive. So there's an example of when we'd like to see more justice, because I believe if a jury heard the whys, even if they agreed with the whys or not, probably would be pretty irrelevant. They would understand why these people believed they were doing the right thing when they were trying to get the attention of the government and have conversations with the government around their programs that they were initiating. And being careful, because we're on YouTube right now. But at the end of the day, that would be justice. Okay. But we have a legal system. I do see Diane, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and see if we've got audio only. If we've got audio only, we can continue with that.
I don't know what to call.
Good morning. Hey, Diane, we do have audio.
Oh, hi. Just trying to find my camera.
It's okay. We can actually just continue with your voice if you want.
Yeah, no. Well, Paula's trying to help me to put my camera on. It says you're in the show. Everyone can see you and hear you.
Yep.
But you can't.
You're live.
You can.
Well, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, well, geez. Okay, hang on. I'm going to turn it.
Oh, she pushed a button that disconnected something. All right. So what we're going to do is kind of work on that a little bit, and I'll get back to you. I will bring up a couple more breaking news for you while we're waiting. So if we go to my X, let me go do that with you. There's a couple breaking news. One out of United States when it comes to the U.S. subcommittee on the coronavirus response. So let me go look for that for you. And also on RCMP, I got a bit of a whistleblower through an ATIP application. So we'll pull that one up first. The RCMP are retaliating against their members. And this was disheartening to see. Not a surprise, to be honest with you. It was really disheartening to see. Here we go. Let me bring this up. And Padge, thank you very much for helping out with Diane. We could hear her, but we couldn't see her. All right. So breaking news, the RCMP are retaliating against former members. So this member was barred from wearing ceremonial uniform. Now, there's more to the story, and it is developing, so there's going to be more information coming out, because ultimately this member was successful at getting permission to go ahead and wear the ceremonial uniform, but it required a lot of steps. It required some more ATIPs, and it required, in order to get the information, because he wasn't notified, he had to receive it through a privacy request. And then that's how he found out that this particular request that was being sent to him, they didn't send it, but they drafted it and did prepare it. And here's what they were doing and prepared to do. First of all, if you read the letter, your participation in the blockade was captured on video for a time that was And at that time, that video was posted on YouTube, increasing the number of people who could have recognized you as a former member. In my view, this conduct shows a lack of judgment and concern for the reputation of the RCMP. Interesting that they're worried about the reputation, but they're taking what I would consider petty action against an officer who appeared in a video without uniform. And here's the consequences that they were prepared to do against him. Quote, I do not have confidence that if you were authorized to wear the RCMP ceremonial uniform, you would exercise the good judgment necessary to determine when and under what circumstances it would be appropriate to wear it. So even if you didn't really participate, you were just there, they caught you on video, they know who you are, RCMP obviously know who their members were. So it does sound like, and if you're not aware of this yet, that the RCMP were going through the video from Coutts looking members, and then to also go ahead and reach out to their members and say, hey, look, there's going to be some penalties. You're not helping our reputation. Although we all know that the reputation is in the hands of the RCMP themselves. And I think their actions spoke louder than words. And this is not the only post. Okay, we have another post here to bring your attention to. I got this one just this morning. Here we go. Breaking news. U.S. government finds Canada's Trudeau government used assault-style weapons against Canadians. So there's a subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic, a lot of you prefer, we all do, but that's the name of the subcommittee, pandemic, released just yesterday, and there's a bunch of findings, and one of them was that Canada, Trudeau, did use automatic weapons on peaceful protesters in Ottawa from February 14th to February 14th to February 20th, 2022. And hey, look, let's now have a legit conversation about these kind of consequences. Section 88.1, which we're very familiar with. These were the charges against the Coutts men. Okay, so Chris Carver, Tony Olenek, Chris Lysak, and Jerry Morin. Possession of weapons for a dangerous purpose to the public peace. That's right there. We can see it as clear as day. Automatic weapons. They have it in the public. Nobody was armed against them. There's really no reason other than intimidation and fear. And this is exactly what this particular section of the criminal code is for. By deploying automatic weapons in a manner that endanger public peace, hundreds of unidentified officers whose whereabouts and nationalities remain unknown are alleged to have violated the statute. I also see that they were blocking roads and blocking people and also causing damage to vehicles. So that's mischief over 5,000, section 430(1) sub C. And we also have section 82(1), possession of explosives. Reports suggest that the police may have utilized or had access to explosives or devices intended to intimidate and control the peaceful protesters. Constitution breach of the section. So I would recommend highly that we take a look at that. There's case law now. They should be looking at 6.5 years each minimum. If anybody assaulted anybody, they should have additional charges. But just standing there with automatic weapons against unarmed citizens should be at least, I think, 6.5 years. I think a lot of you might agree with me on that one. All right, Diane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you in, and we're going to talk. Okay, we're going to pretend
sure.
It's a good radio show. How are you doing, Diane?
I'm really sorry. I logged out. I logged back in. And it must be, I don't know, Apple, or maybe my computer's too old, but it doesn't.
Could be CSIS. Let's get down on the real list. Could be CSIS. Could be RCMP. Who knows?
It gives me the option to turn my mic on, which is built in, and my camera is built in, and I can tell you it always works on Zoom.
That's okay.
But let's Zoom this way.
Yeah, it sounds good. Diane, nice to meet you. You remember we chat a lot on X, and we finally get to have a conversation. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you for sure.
Sir. Amen. And just praying everything goes well. Everything that I say is going to bless everyone, help everyone, and get everyone excited about justice.
Fantastic. So did you hear part of my opening there? We have a legal system, not a justice system.
Can you repeat it? Because I was on the phone with
with Paula,
Dad, and I was turning your audio down so I could hear her.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. So the last part I didn't hear there about a whistleblower or something.
Not necessarily whistleblower. The justice system versus the legal system. So the legal system, that's where we have laws. We all see that one. But the justice system is where you go by case, and you bring in more of the circumstances and the facts. For example, with the Coutts trio, the mischief charge that they were convicted on, they were not allowed to bring their motive forward. They couldn't explain the why. They were not allowed to put that before the jury. Had they been able to, I would consider that justice. They would have been able to tell their why, and then the jury can decide on that point. And that's kind of where I was going. I'd like to see a return to justice, and I'm hoping that conversations like the one I'm about to have with you is a way to do that, because we can identify where we've lost it, where we used to have it, and maybe where we never had it and we need to add it. So thank you, Diane, for joining. And if you don't mind, let's go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, geez. I never want. I don't want to brag. You know how lawyers are, right? Like they're always like, not going to be judged. But I don't want to give you my pedigree. But really quick, so maybe you can ask questions. I'll just give you a quick overview. I was born and raised in northern Alberta, not far from Peace River, French Canadian town, and I went to McGill Law School. First, I did a criminology. Well, basically a psychology and criminology degree at U of C, Calgary, U of A, and I started at Grand Prairie Regional College. How's that for my education?
Wonderful. So you not far from here, so you know where Drayton Valley is.
And I went all the way to Montreal and made my mom cry, but I was really excited because I'd visited there before, and of course I spoke, bilingual. And the McGill Law School offered what's called a national legal program, and so that was common law and civil law. I'm not going to bore your guests with this, but if I only got a law degree from Quebec, I could only practice in Quebec.
Correct,
right?
because
But
it's two different legal systems.
yeah, so I wanted both. I thought, you never know, might meet a nice guy here. I didn't in Montreal, but I met him later in the Yukon. But so I ended up getting what's called a BCL and LLB, common law and civil law degree. But I was always interested in criminal law from day one, like from my criminology days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did criminals do what they do? And then I worked a summer, going to open a bracket as a prison guard, actually 4 consecutive summers, to be honest, because it was good pay. And Peace River Correctional Center, or Institute it's called now. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting, this criminal law stuff. So I really veered off into criminology instead of just psychology. And I guess it's after that I thought I have to do criminal law. I didn't want to be a defense lawyer. And I just felt drawn, I guess, to being a Crown prosecutor. Went to Montreal and ended up in the Northwest Territories. First the Yukon, and then WT.
Wow. Okay, so on the federal level, they could put you anywhere in Canada, I guess.
Yeah, the 2 territories, again, don't want to sound legal beagle about this, but because they're territories, the 3 territories, because I traveled to all 3. I lived in Yukon, lived in NWT, and almost lived in Nunavut for part of my career. It is still the federal Crown prosecutors that do provincial law.
Okay.
So we are like provincial
in the
Crown
territories.
Yeah, because they're not provinces and they don't have their own like Alberta Crown Services or BC or whatever. So the federal Crown prosecutors do all the federal laws, from murder to jaywalking, I used to say.
Okay. Everything in the criminal code.
Yeah, everything. And I was told, go north when I was articling in Montreal, because you're going to just have all these cases right away, because junior Crown counsel get more experience quicker, faster. You're thrown in. Why? No one who wants to live up there. Okay.
Yeah, fair.
But I loved it. Because I was from a small town, so I loved Whitehorse. I was there 4 years. I loved Yellowknife. That's where I did most of my work. 4 years Whitehorse, 17 years in Yellowknife. And because my boss at that time got really ill, I became acting, what was called regional director or chief federal prosecutor. Because I didn't see it as a job opportunity. I was just filling in because we were all very close. Maybe 14 Crown prosecutors, an office in Yellowknife, an office in Inuvik. And then, unfortunately, she passed.
Sorry.
Jason. So I was acting regional director, and I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this job so young. Really, I didn't want that job, but I was asked to take it, and I'm not bragging. It's just, actually, they said, we might put it up for competition. And after 2 years, I said, I just want to go back to courtroom work, because I really did 10 years of frontline, courtroom work. Like I said, from jaywalking to murders. And I thought, no, enough of this management stuff. Although I did love my office and my staff, I really did. And if you'd meet me, you'd know why, because I just love people. I'm really, I just light up around them. I need my break from them, but I really want to help the office through that hard time when we lost our boss to cancer.
Mm.
And then I want to go back. And then they're like, well, we're going to, have a competition. And I said, well, if you give me the job, I'll take it. I didn't think they would. And they said, it's yours. Because
Okay.
to go through another competition and have another acting or director. See, I was thinking of the staff. I really was. I just thought, like, not that I have to do this, because I enjoyed part of it. I enjoyed part of learning about people and managing people. But, after 5 years, I'm just going to leave it there. I did work in Ottawa for a year, by the way, in the interlude there, policy shop. But I started getting too close of a look at above me.
Right.
Above me, the bureaucracy. And I'm just going to call it, small C. These weren't big, huge crimes or anything, but it was more the attitude. See, I went to meetings. I went to Ottawa meetings with the deputy minister, and I was like, I don't know. I just, these people have no heart. And there's some of them were great, okay, but I just
Sure.
couldn't fit into that mentality, because they were all really nice to me. Hi. Like, you're going to apply for a senior regional director. That was for the whole northern region, which I did do that also as an acting for 3 months. I did do that. That was 3 territories to handle, which is only 60% of Canada's landmass, but only about 1% of the population.
Wow.
And
Quite the steward.
yeah, I just became a real northerner. I just loved all the people. And long story short, once they realized I wasn't going to be a senior regional director, which is equal to an ADM, blah, 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 everyone forgot my name. I didn't get birthday cards or birthday emails. And I just thought, oh, these people are like so fake, really.
Mm-hmm.
And what can I say? I don't want to judge them. I'm not going to give names, but
Of course.
it's a really difficult mentality. And every time I hear, oh, these bureaucratic federal workers, I'm like, yeah, you get on a plane when it's 70 kilometers an hour winds and you're carrying 30-pound briefcases to hold you down. Like, not all federal jobs are, we do nothing and, we're
Right.
bureaucratic and boring. But Ottawa, I worked there for a year, like I said, in a policy shop related to criminal legal aid and who got it and who didn't in the provinces. And I was never so bored in my life, number one, and I was never so depressed. Like, and just around me, everyone seemed depressed.
Mm.
It's just not a good vibe.
Well, let's take it back to McGill for a little bit, and let's get into
Yeah.
the criminal
I don't
psychology.
want to use Freeland, by the way. Freeland's vibe thing. Okay. I
So
just realized she said that once.
when you were doing your criminal psychology studies, what are the types of criminals? Because I can understand, as weird as me saying, I can understand a street level criminal. I can understand a opportunist, someone that took the opportunity. I can even understand white collar crime, where they're trying to be greed or whatnot. But what's the level after that you start to see above you? Like, what would you classify that? Because that's like power related corruption. Like, what kind of criminal is that? Can you take us through the types of criminals? If there's such a thing.
Well, I'm just going to say where I worked. I was far enough from Ottawa, Yellowknife, and NWT that we didn't really have a lot of organized crime, or I was far from big cities, number one. But I worked in the good old days of the good old justice system. And when you're talking about legal versus justice, I say lawful versus legal. That's how I, like what should be lawful as a law and what should be the law, or how should our judicial system work. But there's obviously like okay, here we go with mischief. I can't even remember prosecuting mischief. I had lots of mischief charges.
Mm-hmm.
They were all pled out. Or I said to the police, come on, this was a kid like writing on the back of a building. Or a young adult, maybe it was a juvenile or young offenders court, whatever they call it now, youth criminal justice, or an older person who had done something like thrown eggs at, like, it was so minor.
Mm-hmm.
Only shoplifting was considered less. So a lot of the crime up there was based on, unfortunately, many of the First Nations communities that had a lot of problems with addictions.
Mm.
And but that was the majority of the population there, or where I work. Like, each territory is a bit different, but the majority of the population was First Nations or Métis. But we got to know them a lot as friends. We worked with them. I had them as interpreters, especially in Nunavut. There's only a few criminals. I saw one with a upside down cross on his forehead that I thought, that guy is scary. And if you want a little anecdote, I got to ride in an elevator with him. Thankfully, the policemen were there, but he was in the wrong elevator. I'm like, like when he was in custody. So when the RCMP escort them to the courtroom, there's another elevator, okay, for
Fair.
them. And there are elevators for lawyers that are going to put their robes on. And I just stared at that guy right in the eyes, and I thought, you're not going to scare me. And I ended up being, the Crown Prosecutor. So,
Did you
yeah.
have any protest-related charges that you had to address?
Never.
No.
Never. Like I said, it's been 10 years, right, since I retired. So,
So right before Trudeau, you got out of there.
pretty much.
All right.
Well,
so you've seen the system change from when you were there to now.
I was I was there when Alan Rock brought in all the gun laws, or the firearm registry, I should say. And I remember talking to the local police and the firearms police, the Canadian Police Association, and they were all saying, that's not going to help. Like, criminals don't register guns.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, that was the difference between Harper and the conservative and the liberals. They're always trying to overreach, and they don't look at the root of the problem, right? They don't look at the cause. But what we're looking at today, and I don't know if I answered your question on the types of criminals, but like the ones I saw, even the ones that, like I said, there was that one guy with the cross, and there's another one who was like kind of considered a shaman or a medicine doctor, I guess, if I can in a small community, very small town in Nunavut. Really, really horrible crimes to kids and his own kids and animals. And I guess that guy, even him, I thought, yeah, when he gets into the courtroom, it's the community was scared of him, but I wasn't. You see, I didn't believe in that stuff. And I thought, too bad. Like, see, I was always like, when I was a prison guard, let's just do it. Let's go in. Let's do it. And I have every right to be here. And there's lots of cops here. So, he can't put a spell on me. But the whole town was petrified. And he was a very evil man. So did I see like a lot of evil? Like, no, I saw a lot of broken people
Right.
from every background. Every background. And I'll say this. I was thinking of this earlier. Should I say this or shouldn't I? When you talk about any political interference, we'll talk about this, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm ready for that one.
Yeah. There was only one time where I won't even say what just out of caution. Okay.
Sure, an
Well,
elected
I won't
official
even
somewhere.
no, I won't even say what territory I was working in, but we did get a call once from a local MP about somebody we were prosecuting. I'll just put it that way. And it was a pretty high profile individual, or the son of a high profile individual, very high profile. And I was the one who, was told about it. I'll just put it that way. And I had to give this junior crown some advice. And I said, you just say, butt out. I'll be blunt. You do not interfere in this prosecution. This is called the rule of law. And, there was just like, to me, it's like a no-brainer, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
It should be a no-brainer. I don't know what's happened. You see, I never prosecuted in Alberta. I did move to Edmonton. Then, unfortunately, I got sick and I took a medication, and it actually made me really, really ill.
Sorry, Diane.
Yeah. No, well, life gives you lemons.
Fair enough.
Lemonade. But and it wasn't the jab. It wasn't a jab of any kind. It was just something that I had a really bad allergic reaction to. And so, although we can't compare how illness hits different people and how it just breaks my heart what's happened with the jab. That's all. That's another, like, those are crimes against humanity.
Sure, and if you don't mind, we'll jump into the members area for some of that because we'll be included.
Sure, absolutely. That's all I'm going to say, because I have listened to a lot of your programs, like Wiseman's Fraud and all the big characters and everything. But,
so back to that MP, if you don't mind, was there even a thought to maybe charge this person because what they were doing was a type of interference, or was it just like they didn't quite cross the line yet? But
it's not me.
Say no.
It's not me who spoke to them, and they weren't, I guess, recorded. And it was more or less an inquiry about
it wasn't
happening.
Directing, but maybe coming close to the line.
I think they would have liked that conversation to go further.
Sure.
And thankfully, the junior crown that dealt with it was really good at saying, sorry, we just don't talk to anyone that's not involved in the prosecution. That is the accused, the defense lawyer, the judge or a clerk or whatever, anyone from the courthouse, or the victim, or we don't even talk to the victim's family unless the victim is there with her family or his family,
or they might be witnesses or something. Then maybe
there's like you couldn't call in, Jason, and say, hey, can I talk about this case, if you weren't involved directly, and hopefully nobody is ever involved directly in a criminal prosecution in any way. But, you could be the mother of the accused, and we'd say the same thing. So it didn't cross the line. It didn't quite get to obstruction of justice. Well, that's the closest I ever got.
Well, let me bring up a couple of quotes from Danielle, and maybe you can help me understand them.
Sure.
One of them from January 25th, 2024. Danielle Smith said, Premier Danielle Smith said, there's no interaction you can have as a provincial leader on pardons, no interaction you can have with the police, no interactions you can have with the prosecutors, no interactions you can have with the court system. All right, so that's the first quote. What are your thoughts on that? Does that sound right?
Yeah,
reasonable?
I read that. That was a really good thread.
Like that particular in January of 25th, 2024, it sounds like she understood her limits on interference.
As a premier, I would say to have a direct contact, yes, she shouldn't, or he shouldn't. But there is an attorney general.
Sure.
And overall, like, my boss was, the Justice Minister / Attorney General. So remember Jody Wilson-Raybould?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, SNC Lavalin. So,
I'm trying to reach out to her, by the way. So if you have her number,
yeah, I hope you get to interview her, because, like, really, I was so, well, was so proud of her because, I never really paid attention to politics before, before some of the truther stuff I got into a little bit with New World Order. People can believe it or not, but I've done a lot of
Oh, it's
research.
true. They have a book. You can buy it.
It's pretty out there now. When I started 10 years ago, I just love to learn, and I just thought, wow, this sounds true, and it has a ring of truth to it. And I watched a lot of different programs, all kinds of stuff before a lot of things got censored. But back to this quote, I haven't looked at. There must be a legislation for Alberta, like the I don't know, Alberta Justice Act or something, where establishing the Attorney General. The Attorney General overall has accountability for just prosecutions, fair prosecutions, following the rule of law. So he or she's the ultimate boss. But what happened in the federal government, and this is not, I'm not sure in Alberta, can't remember off the top of my head, is that they created the Public Service Prosecution of Canada, which that was Harper's, one of the last things he did. He wanted to separate the prosecutions from the Department of Justice. It was more of an appearance, but you know how perception is reality. So it was like we were we were in the government, we got paid, as federal government employees, etc. However, we were taken out of the Department of Justice. So any Minister of Justice, federal for sure, wears two hats, AG and Minister of Justice. So who has the accountability? Well, one of those two. Like, I'm sorry, if you got rogue prosecutors, like I had a junior prosecutor that I supervised, and I wasn't getting good. Well, they were mistakes. They just some people aren't meant to be in courtrooms. It can be very stressful. But there were a number of times where I had to say, is this the right job for you? So because I was getting stuff back, like from judges coming to me. This is when I was the chief or the boss or whatever you want to call me, federal prosecutor, and some of the judges were saying, what you've done today, Mr. or Mrs. X, has ruined the administration of justice.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, got to talk to this person again. So you are accountable. But did it, Jody Wilson-Raybould was putting a clear line that the prime minister should not get involved. I mean, actually, I'll just open a bracket. There's enough evidence there for obstruction of justice, and I've said it before. The police just didn't bother finishing their investigation. There's actually a parliamentary committee on that, and you may know Larry Brock, MP, Conservative, and he promises to keep looking at this one day. He's the shadow Minister of Justice. But I guess the bottom line is that Danielle's shouldn't get directly involved, unfortunately, although we'd kind of like her to. But I don't see what's wrong with saying to her AG, or like, I don't know if they wear two hats in Alberta. I can't remember.
I believe they do. Yeah. I believe it's Mickey Amory for both right now.
Right.
I believe it. And my chat will correct me very quickly.
Right. So you can kind of say things like, well, I'm getting concerns. I heard your town hall questions. Very good. From the public, from different people that have written to me. Obviously, a number of people have probably voiced their concerns to her. And, maybe it's different in the U.S. Tucker was, sort of in Edmonton saying, hey, Danielle, why don't you go visit him? Well, she could have done that, as long as someone would have been there making sure she's not giving him legal advice. It is putting her in a tough position. But she could ask her Minister of Justice, hey, it's just getting a lot of stuff that's not looking good here. Like, can you call your chief crown prosecutor and see what's going on?
Well, I think when that envelope, and we'll
I
jump into that, when that came up, that absolutely should have been a trigger of some sort.
Well,
Paula has confirmed Mickey Amory is the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General of Alberta.
okay, right. Oh, Solicitor General. Okay.
So we both
So
have those. So
here's
what
the
I'm going to do, I'll take you to the second quote, and then we'll wrap up this portion of it,
right.
because
Sure.
what I want to get to is I actually concur
If you,
with her statement in January.
yeah, it's not black and white, but I do think her AG could, if there's a complete miscarriage of justice happening in your backyard, speak up.
Well,
Yeah.
there's at least a perception of it. So
Well,
let's
go
figure out
through
what's
the
going on.
chain of command. Like, talk to your minister, solicitor general. Hey, look into this. You can at least make a call. Doesn't mean you're, I just think politicians are so scared.
Well, here's a
Sometimes.
question from my chat, so maybe they can get it. Was Mickey Amory also Minister of Justice under Kenny? I wondered who's the Minister of Justice under Kenny. Let's find that out. But here's the second quote I want to bring to your attention, Diane.
Sure.
This is November 28th, so just a few days ago. Who do you think was responsible for the policing of what happened at Coutts? That was under our jurisdiction. The RCMP are on contract to us. It was our obligation to make sure the border got cleared. Now, this gave me goosebumps, because wait a minute, that sounds to me to be way too much involvement when it came to the police actions. And she's outright saying, who do you think is responsible for the policing of what happened in Coutts? That to me is either a misstatement or very accurate and very wrong. So what are your thoughts about, on its face, prima facie, what does that statement sound like to you that she made there? Because she was bragging about being able to control the border in response to Trump's requirements for greater security at the border. That was her brag. That she was flexing, but that flex may have exposed like a Freudian slip more than she wanted to. I'm not sure.
Okay, let me just ask you this, just to make sure. It was Kenny that was there during the whole time.
Correct. It
During
was Jason Kenney during that. Yes.
protest. Okay, so yeah, I agree with you. Prima facie.
Yeah, on its face.
On its face, she's kind of flipped there. It's like, I'm in charge of the RCMP. I can tell them what to do over there. I know why I'm using a southern accent, maybe because it has to do with Montana. I have friends all over, and I always do these accents from the States. But, maybe I'll call her office about that and just say, geez, I'm just wondering, like, why you would say A over here and B over there. And, you could do that too.
Mhm.
But someone with...
She's not responding. I have tried, by the way. She
Yeah,
hasn't responded since she won.
She only responds to my emails when I tell her, I like what you're doing, which, I said, that's a good first step with the trans stuff. I'll just leave it there.
Sure.
When she did that last fall. But, yeah, just also I'm disappointed in the Bill of Rights, Alberta Bill of Rights too.
Yep.
Like you said, I was not involved in local politics or even Canadian politics. To be honest, I thought it was boring. But I also worked 80 hours a week for my whole career, so it was enough of that when I got home. You know what I watched? Law and Order. No, I'm just.
I loved Law and Order, by the way. LA Law, all of those.
I loved it all. My ex now, and my husband that I was married to for a long time, he was like, yeah, you're really taking a break. I was like, a special victims unit, Law and Order #1, Law and Order #2. And what was the cop show? NYPD Blues. Yeah. That's how I relax. So I guess,
So back to this comment, because we're running out of time. So back to this comment.
I'm sorry, it's my fault.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll try and be like the judge. I'll try and get us back onto track here.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that statement, on its face, it does have some concerns. At least some clarification on what she actually meant should be forthcoming at this stage, because in tandem with the crime fraud envelope, which we sat through the trial and the arguments of in July 2023, it was very clear that something is being alleged by the defense. 4 different attorneys all agreed on it, brought it forward. So each attorney for each of the men brought it forward, called it crime fraud. The judge did agree that it needed to stay sealed for the administration of justice, for the perception of the administration of justice. So that means, to me at least the judge agrees this isn't good. Whatever it isn't good, because if it came out, it would make the Crown's office look bad and possibly the RCMP as well. My argument is that should be investigated, not the case and not what's going on in the courtroom, but that should be separated from the case, and that should be taken a look at.
Well, I put this in a comment, and I'll just repeat it. I cannot wrap my mind around any criminal case that would have even proceeded with something called a crime fraud envelope. Like any proceeding. Like, what are you doing? You're sealing secretly with the lawyers. I'm correct, right? Even the
correct. The men weren't not even in the room, and that's something that's going to be coming up in appeal. Yeah.
So this, like, we used to get a lot of disclosure call for Crown Eyes Only, and it was just like, well, it was just little things, and sometimes the police would be like putting all their disclosure under Crown Eyes Only, and we'd be like, no, the law is the Crown prosecutors have to give everything to the defense, otherwise the case can get thrown out.
Right.
And well, anyway, it was the Supreme Court of Canada case. It was just part of it. Was DNA was in my blood. I can't remember the case, but it's the first thing they tell you. It's in every
Stitchcomb, right?
Yeah, a Stitchcomb. Way to go,
like,
Jason.
what?
Thank you. So, every Crown prosecutor in Canada knows this.
Yep.
Like probably in the U.S. similar.
And every defense too knows this, and every student of law knows this.
So that's when I really I didn't, X is. I only started getting on X in August. You know why? Because I thought I'm always going to be on there arguing, and so. But that's when I found you, and I thought, wow, he's gone like that. He had everything from the Coutts trial, and so I tried to listen as much as I could, and I was blown away by this crime fraud envelope.
Yeah.
I'm like, how could it proceed? How could the Crown not have to disclose that? That's disclosure. And I'm not criticizing the lawyers for Tony or Chris. That went to the full trial and everything, or even before, during the bail hearings, it was there. But how could a defense lawyer agree it's okay to go ahead?
It wasn't even their choice. So there was a secret judgment.
Okay, well, that makes better sense.
And they were all threatened, license and jail. They were all threatened.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yes.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry you have a cold. I do too a bit.
No. It's my studio. It's just chilly in here. Paula was running too. We don't have a cold. It's just the cold air.
All right. Good. Yeah. Well, it's just I know a lot of people with them right now. So
fair enough.
Is there an update on that? Has anyone?
Okay, so the update is $12,000 was raised to get the transcripts for that week, for the crime fraud envelope argument week, which was July 24th to 29th, I think, 2023. $12,000. And they should be received early 2025. So Betty says, I think January or February, they're expecting to get a copy of those transcripts. Then the next stage of that is to analyze those transcripts and then see what can be done and put together an argument to get an application to unseal the envelope. Now, I'm putting pressure on Danielle Smith, because I think Danielle Smith should be the one who's bringing forward an application to unseal that and take a look at that, or at least her office, or Amory should as well. At least they should be taking a look at that. They can stay away from the trial. They can stay away from the verdict and the appeals, even the charges. They can stay away from all of that for now, because they can say they don't want to interfere.
Yeah, anything that's ongoing in a public courtroom right now, right?
Sure, but the crime fraud envelope brings up a specific person, Stephen Johnston, because he wasn't even allowed to be part of the arguments in July because he's potential witness or defendant based on the allegations. So they have to bring a separate Crown in.
I mean, I think this is unprecedented. I'm sure.
It is, and that came out in the arguments. There's never been a time where the Crown, because this became case law, there never was a time where the Crown inadvertently gave disclosure that shows a potential allegation of the Crown committing a crime. That's never happened before. So we had to go through all those arguments that there's no case law. The judge had to make a decision. He decided to open it and read it. This is all brand new case law that's happened before us. But I still think it's very improper that they continued with that Crown. There's two reasons why I want to say this to you, Diane, that I think is improper. Sure. The crime fraud envelope is the obvious one. But the second one was, it's the same guy, Stephen Johnston, who was working with them during the investigation phase and charging stages to do that. And then he also became the trial prosecutor. I think there should be a separation there. I think whoever investigates or participates it early shouldn't be the one that goes to trial. I think that should be a separation.
You're absolutely right. First of all, it's very normal. We used to have a duty crown for the police to call the crowns and say, can I get help with this? Can I get help with that? But to be intimately involved from day one, probably, we're not sure in this case, but looks that way. I mean, to really, like, here's how you're going to set them up. Or here's how you...
Or cover your own tracks, or cover your own fire.
Yeah, or get rid of the notes, or all the things, all those details that you've brought out so well, Jason, about how it's just, this doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right. It doesn't.
Well, let me remind everybody where the crime fraud envelope came from. So there was an application for disclosure, and unfortunately here in Canada, and as you and Stitch Home says, you should be getting disclosure. Yeah, you should be getting it. There was an application for disclosure because they were fighting for the notes of an officer, and the officer was called as a witness, and the defense had the officer on the stand, and all of a sudden there was a notebook in front of the officer. And they're like, what's that? And he's like, these are my notes. And they're like, well, we were told you don't have any.
Oh.
So the judge went and looked at the Crown and said, what's going on here? Oh, we weren't sure. We didn't know. We weren't aware. We're so sorry. So the judge at that point says, you need to disclose that notebook to defense. So what happened was, in the rush, they disclosed all of it. And there was a page on there that they would have retracted had they had the time, because that was their argument during the week of the argument of the crime fraud envelope, is that shouldn't have been, it was client solicitor privilege, it shouldn't have been disclosed. What was disclosed was all of the notes from that officer, and one page has 7 lines, is all I know about it, which clearly outlined, according to the defense that read it, directions to the police to commit a crime. That's how it was disclosed. And then from that point on, it's when this whole crime fraud envelope was created with the Law Society of Alberta. And then they went through that whole application and created case law, and it's currently still sealed.
And so, why aren't they getting involved? The Alberta Law Society, such a disappointment.
Look, Diane,
I'm with crime fraud. It's not like, I mean, how obvious can you get? The judge stamped it. And really, I don't know why the judge would have ruled to continue any trial with that kind. Like, I don't know what it says. Okay, maybe he was overly cautious, but we're all suspicious. That's for sure, because it's called a crime fraud envelope.
Yep.
And we're not the U.S. or even on TV shows. I don't really know if they all do this. Probably on major cases where the district attorney there / prosecutor, crown prosecutor, goes around with the investigators, and they're doing the search, and it's a whole different, like, we don't do that here. We don't get involved like that at all. Right. Even when I was assigned a special case, let's say, one that lasted a really long time was, I don't know, they started out with 100 victims. We had 40 at the end of sexual assault. But can I say that? Oh yeah, I can. I'm on X. I'm not on YouTube.
You're good.
I'm so used to YouTube. SA.
We're on YouTube, but you're good. You haven't touched any subject.
Oh, okay, yeah. So what was I saying? Sorry.
Well, it's a good question, because yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just finish it. So it was an offender. It was very up in Inuvik in a residential school. But it was actually a justice of the peace that was doing this. Wasn't a religious person, but you know, the residential school cases. This was like a 3-week trial. It was really long. And I guess my point is that I didn't get involved in, you know, do this, do that, police. I didn't get involved in that part. Once I got all their package and I was specially assigned, then they would call me. Yes, I would give them, you know, advice. Get another witness statement. Go interview this person. You know, call these people, subpoena these people. And, you know, we have a different burden, the Crown. It's a reasonable prospect of conviction, not reasonable and probable grounds. That's how the police lay charges. We need a reasonable prospect of conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And then the jury, of course, needs a reasonable, beyond a reasonable doubt. But I don't know if you want to stop me here, because you know how lawyers are.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Because we do have to get ready for the members area soon. So what we'll do is we'll start to wrap up with the public. Wow, Diane, you have to come back because there's so much more to get into. We can get into some of your old cases, the Mosley decision, and other things. But wrapping up on this Coutts one, this particular judge, Justice David Lebrans, he also made a decision that the warrant that they got for Joanne Person's place was illegally obtained, had incorrect information. They didn't identify what they were really looking for. They had no probable grounds to be looking for guns. This kind of stuff came out. So this justice, who saw the crime fraud envelope, also threw out a warrant, also threw out the 48 hours of the warrant that was used for imminent harm. So the he ruled that only the first 24 hours is okay, but everything after that is not, because they had that warrant in place for 3 days. Like, he made these kind of decisions, and also getting rid of some prejudicial evidence, and this whole thing around Diagolon got axed pretty early around Barbara Perry. Like, this judge knows all of this stuff. So he knows the crime fraud envelope. He knows a couple warrants were no good. He knows that they're creating a narrative. Yet he still is protecting the administration of justice from being exposed for what's going on here. So as we're starting to put all of these together, and we're doing like a Trump weave when it comes to figuring this out, there's something fishy in my mind going on here. I'm not going to say corruption. I'm not going to say anything like that, because I have zero evidence of that. But if we're tea-leaving this and we're taking a look at this, I would really expect the justice to pause, deal with that envelope, take it differently, especially now that he's got more and more things of inappropriate activities, we'll at least call it that, in the Coutts situation with the RCMP. You know, the excavator damages.
No, wiretap, and he believed police all the time.
Bingo, bango, right? Like, all of that.
It seemed like he got worse a little bit, especially with his judgment. In between the time that you thought it sounded not, maybe he was a lot of. I watched a lot of your videos, Jason, and it sounded. It was more near the end. I never did catch up with the 40, however many days it was.
43, yeah.
43, but it just sounded like he took a break, and all of a sudden
Betty said that, yeah. So when we had her on doing the debunk of the CBC video just a week or so ago, we both agreed on that. The night that the verdict came in, which was a Friday night, it was late. The way the judge was asking the defense of whether or not you're ready to start the sentencing arguments now gave everybody the impression that he wanted to let them out on bail, at least pending the sentence or something like that. Like, he was probing the defense to provide the arguments immediately. They weren't ready, so they had to get another court date. And then when we actually came back for that portion, he was very different. And I can now tell everybody this. A juror reached out to me after the verdict was rendered, weeks after the verdict was rendered. So well past any time that they're not allowed to talk to me. One reached out to me. And that juror was very sad to listen to my episode about the judge's finding of facts from the jury decision. So there was a Tuesday where the judge gave his finding of facts based on the jury decision.
Yeah, that wasn't good either.
No, a juror listened to that episode and then reached out and said they're very sad to hear what the judge said. So they can't tell me what they talked about. That's illegal. But they're absolutely allowed to give their opinion on an episode. And this person, which is a juror, and I have confirmed, and I do recognize the person, was not pleased with the finding of facts by the judge, which leads me to believe that he got it wrong. Okay, so he took it further than maybe they did in their mind, this particular juror. And they were sad by his finding of facts. And then I assure you the sentencing and the rest of it was also something that weighed on them as well.
You know, his judgment, basically, he was like, I kind of really think they used the guns to get the police. He basically said that in his legal language, and they were acquitted of that.
Correct.
And his finding of facts was leaning that way, but then there was a break in. It was even worse, his judgment.
Correct, because he built up the platform to get Chris to the same level. That wasn't the jury. It was him. He's like, well, I believe this. I believe that. It must have been this. I don't think hunting must have been to shoot the police. Therefore, Chris is the same.
I'm still I'm a non-practicing member of the bar. But I'll just say this, like, we're just speculating. We have no evidence. But, like, did somebody call that judge? You know, I don't know this judge. Like, if I had appeared in front of this judge a lot, I could tell a lot better. And I'm sure you could, Jason, because you were there for a number of days along with other people. And you can tell by body language and the face of a judge. Is this the same guy? Is he, like, got his mean face on? You know, you could tell. So I leave it to you to have the final say on that, because to me, just hearing his decisions a little, I didn't hear all the pretrial decisions, didn't get to those videos, but just hearing what he said, throughout the trial and your comments, Jason, I was like, sounds like he's being at least reasonable, you know.
It was at times. Like, I kept going back and forth with him.
Well, I thought he was trying to be fair to both sides, and he knew it was a big public thing, and he wanted to make it look like he wasn't pro-Crown or pro-defense. I mean, you can get judges. There were some pro-Crown judges. I'd walk in. I didn't even open my mouth, and the judge would say, "Detained." And there were other judges. And I got to tell you, in those times, I thought that was fair. I mean, I would never ask. I'm just joking here. But there were other judges who would be like, yeah, no, it's okay. You know, if you have a rap sheet, as long as, this living room, we'll just let you out because, blah, 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 blah. And, we knew our judges. And so I don't know. I don't know this judge at all. But I'm just saying, you would have gotten to know his body language a bit.
Yeah, and I did like him until the finding of facts that day, that Tuesday. And if you look at my episode, I was sad on that one too. Yeah, and then the sentencing, because this justice, he presided over another trial where I think it was 4 RCMP officers died.
Court, yeah.
Yeah, and he handed out 7.5 years.
That was the guy who did the actual murders there killed himself, right?
I don't know all the details, but I know that the people that he sentenced for that.
I think that was the people who knew about the individual who had a gun, or they provided a gun, or they provide some. I don't remember.
Aiding and abetting, possibly conspiracy. Like he went down that road again.
Or the police shot him. I think the actual shooter. We'd have to look it up. Like, it's probably an old, on Google somewhere. But
in that case, somebody actually was injured. 4 people died.
Well, yeah.
Firearms were really used. Those are as serious as it gets. 7.5.
What year was that again? Do you remember?
It wasn't long ago. No, I don't know, but our chat would know. And by the way, our chat brought up something interesting here that I should bring to your attention.
Right.
So Amory wasn't the Minister of Justice at the time. But however, there's a person by the name of Tyler Sandro who was the Minister of Justice at the time. But then they changed the Minister of Justice in Alberta to Diane Batten, February 2022. So the same month that this whole Coutts thing happened, they changed the Minister of Justice. So this would have been under Kenny. So he changed his Minister of Justice while he was still Premier. Why? So I want to have a real close look at this Tyler person. And was this person talking to Stephen Johnston, who talked to the RCMP, who created the notes that created a crime fraud envelope? Like, we need to look into this. I think there's way too many questions.
Those are ATIP requests, right? You can do.
Yeah.
Right. And, they might redact it all. Let me just tell you.
Do you want to help us on some of this? Maybe we can work behind the scenes
yeah,
on some
sure.
ATIP stuff.
I wouldn't mind. I am involved in like some. Well, I don't want to make it sound like I'll fit you in, but for the last, 7 years, I've been involved in a number of chat groups and explaining things and helping people along and putting jokes. And now I'm on X, and it's like I was on Telegram.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little social butterfly. But having said that, I do like working on very focused things. I would not give you advice. Okay. I'm still.
No. Yeah.
It's more sentimental, Jason, but I'm still a non-practicing member of the NWT bar. And so even if I wasn't, I wouldn't be able to give legal advice because I'd be tired. So I can give legal information though. And I know the line. And, I've been on every social media with my name. I'm not afraid. I would have shown my face today. I've shown it before. I talked about the Emergencies Act before on, I think it was Northern Perspective. So I'm willing to help anyone that I can help in any way.
Wonderful. So what we might do is kind of hyper-focus your efforts with us on the envelope portion, because we're still working on that
envelope unsealed. I can't appear in court, of course. No. But
we can talk.
I would just love, that case should have never proceeded. That's my bottom line with a crime fraud, big crime fraud stamped on it. But let's go to trial. What?
Yep. Innocence at stake was one of the arguments the defense was giving. They're like, look, this shows that these men were innocent, and that should be enough to stop it here. Nope. Sealed. So this is the biggest injustice, and I think absolutely Alberta should, and Danielle should, and Amory should, even for the perception of the administration of justice, do exactly that. Take a look at it. But
well,
they're very mute on it.
Are we in your backstage now?
We're about to head there right now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, all right. I'm watching what I say a little bit before we get
Okay,
there.
well, then let's hold on. So right there, we'll leave that cliffhanger there.
Right.
So if you're not a member yet, go to thelevineshow.com to hear what Diane's about to say. You got time. But go ahead and become a member. You can download the app. You can do that as well from Google or Apple and get yourself going. You can send an email to members@thelevineshow.com if you need any help or you need some preferred pricing. We'll be very, very honored to help you out with that. You can also phone Paula at 587-673-9955, and she'll help you in any way that you need. So if you're not a member yet, go do that. Diane's about to spill the beans. Members, hold on. We'll be right there. And Diane, you hold on as well. Public, have yourself a wonderful day. And here, look what we're doing. We're talking to people who understand the law, know the lines, know how to play within it, understands what they would have done and what should have been done. We've got some really good people that are coming around to try and help. That envelope will be open. That's a commitment that I have to all of you. So please stay tuned. So public, take care of yourself and your family. Make sure you shake the hand of a neighbor or a stranger. And why do I keep reminding you about this? It's because I love you all very much. God bless.
Warning. Member videos may contain confidential information about ongoing legal proceedings. Unauthorized publication, distribution, or broadcasting of the contents of these videos outside of the member's area